So here is our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee Ltd. And just after we have gotten the package installed for the Blue Ox BX 1128 toe plate, and still working on the electrical, but that should get you a view of what the finished project looks done in our garage. And this car is towable, and so that means that it's four-wheel drive and has a neutral selector. There is your view of the 4x4, and we'll jump into how to get that toe plate installed and what has to happen. And there's a few things that you've got to know, and so I'll give you some tips and tricks. But essentially it's 4 or 5 steps, and the first is that you're going to be releasing some clips along the top. Then you're going to go underneath and release some push pins and twist clips along the bottom. And finally, in the wheel wells, you're going to be removing some of these rivets that have been replaced here, plastic rivets. There's a 8mm or 10mm bolt in each wheel well. And then down at the very bottom, there's also another bolt on the inside of the wheel well over here. And you have to remove the windshield washer reservoir sitting right about in here to get at the frame extensions for where you will be installing these the Blue Ox base plate, which is actually 2 pieces separate. So, and here you have the four-wheel drive and the neutral selector. You're going to need that in order to be able to tow the 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee Ltd. RV Shop and Chef here today. The chef isn't in the shop, so we're working alone. But here you can see that we have a project in front of us, and that is the installation of the BX 1128 base plate for towing the, I think it's 2011 to 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee. And here you have what that looks like. So you're going to start off with, there's your removable pins here up on the front. And this kit comes with quite a lot of parts, and so it's a pretty big job. I think we're going to allow most of a day. And you see you have some spacers. You have the safety cables here that are up there. There you have some more of the plates and adapters that are necessary. I've collected the instructions. There's the hardware bag. We have a few tools lying around here. Got an air ratchet here, or an air tool. We do have a pretty nice setup here as an air connection there for us, and so here in the shop we'll be working with that only where we need it. I think honestly a little too much power, but I left my impact wrench up in the coach, which is having a windshield put in right now. So there we have it. That's the car that's the target, and as you guys are aware, basically you have to pull off the entire front fascia, and then you have to drill out the rivets that are over the wheel well arches. And there's quite a lot of fender well attachments, those little pop-ups. And so another set of tools we have over here, you can see that is my body tool set. This guy right here is going to be super useful. That'll help pull up all those little fender panel connectors. But you will get to see the whole project go through. and from beginning to end. Now let's get to it. All right, the first thing you're after down here on the bottom, this is the bottom of the bumper on the front side of the car. And what you see here are some of these little push pins. These are the points that hold the front fascia into the front faceplate. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those push pins. So you'll want to get under those and then bring the head up. I think you can see it from here. There we go. And once that's done, then the pin itself will come out. And there's your first connector off. You're going to have 4 of those. So let's go ahead and take those out. Separate the center of the pin first. And then pop the whole pin out. There we go. There we go. Pin's out and the head is out. All right, the next thing we have to do is drill out 2 fender panel rivets. These are plastic rivets. But what I really like is this great tool that my Levy got me. That's a Makita, sideways drill and a horizontal drill, and that is such a great tool. Because I can get into places that you can't get with a full drill body. So we're going to take this tool and probably, I'm going to say, just enough drill bit to get the center of the rivet drilled out, and then we might even have to use our fender tool to pull the rest of the rivet body out. Let's go take a look at it now. All right, there you can see the 2 rivets. And so just a quick, let's see if we can control this light. There's rivet 1, there's rivet 2. Then I think that's the 10mm bolt that we're going to need to take out. And so we'll have to deal with that. These are also the twist panels that connect the fender well cover. So our next challenge is going to be, we drill out those 2 rivets, presuming we can get at them, and then we'll remove that 10mm nut or bolt. So, all right, there's our rivet. Here's a little sideways drill, one of my favorite tools. And so we're just going to try to drill out the center of that rivet right there. Convinced I've got that out of there. And here's the next rivet down here. You can see him down towards the bottom. See if we can get on in there and try to drill him out. Alright, so take a look at how these go through. They have snap panels that fit into the fascia or into the front fender well assembly. So you're just going to pull those out, right? to free it up from the fender, and then that should give us room to get also to this 10mm nut. So a bolt. Let's take care of that next, and I think that's him right there. And there's the second twist fastener. We did reach under the passenger side and pulled out that twist fastener. And so into the bag goes the twist fastener. And then of course we still have the 2 pop rivets to do on that side, so let's go take care of those now. Alright, so the easiest rivet is the one that's most visible, right here in front of the wheel well. Probably need a little bit bigger drill bit to drill the center out of that rivet. And with the body panel removal tool, I just went ahead and pulled that rivet through. He came out fairly clean. We've got one more rivet to go. He is down here. He was stubborn. I'm going to clip him off on the front. Now that was fairly easy. My assumption is that he will pretty much fall apart, and out we pop. That wheel well trim, and she's loose. And so I think we're now where both fenders are finished out. We're told that we just need to pull those 2 rivets and the 10mm bolt on each side, and so that is now done. And bagged up are all of our the bodies of our rivets and the 2 twist tools that we took out, and on top of that the 2 10mm panel screws that we pulled out. So we're in pretty good shape there, I think. Right, on the top of the radiator, 2 push pins that also have to be removed. So we'll try to get lighting and get that identified. It's this one here, just inboard of this receptacle, this square socket, not that one out there, but the one inboard towards the inside of the frame. All right, so there's the square socket, and this one's on the inboard side over here as well. So these are the 2, this one and that one, and they're inside the 2 square sockets here. All right, let's pull those out. So now we slip up under the pin itself, and out he comes. As best I can from here. Let's see what we can do. All right, out he comes. That gives us 2 push pins, body push pins off the top of the radiator there. So another step. All right, our next challenge is going to be the 3 twist latches on the bottom of the fascia. And there's one there, you can see. Then over here in the middle, a second one here. And finally a third that's over here to the right here. And so we want to twist those 3 and then remove them, and they will go in their own bag. And here's the middle one. We'll just look at how that comes out. A quick twist to the right, and out comes the twist. All right, let's go ahead and get the first one. It's only 90 degrees left, right? There he is. All right, that had to be done solo, so I'm going to have to explain this to you. What you want to do on the front end is grab the fender right here on the outside edge and pull straight away. And there's a series of interlock tabs right here, and as you pull away on the fender, that's going to release those interlock tabs. Then there's a channel here, and then the top of the cover will be sitting up on top of the radiator here. So you're going to want to lift up and make sure where you took out all three of those, or those two push pins, that you've got that free. And then the easiest way to get it off, I actually put two boxes underneath it on the front end. This air dam comes off as well. I set these two boxes underneath it to hold it up so it wouldn't fall and twist and damage any pieces. And so I just reached up under the frame here and lifted, and right here at the headlights, right up here at the headlights, these pieces snapped loose, just kind of came out of the crease, and then the entire fascia was loose. When I lifted up and away, it cleared the top here, and now we have the fascia completely off. I put a little tape on it where I was working to make sure that I didn't scratch or damage anything. And so there's the fascia. It came off very clean. We didn't have any issues or problems with it. And so now I think we get started down on the inside of the car. Right, so here we're looking at the windshield washer bottle, and we're going to have to disconnect the pump down here. So we're going to, now that we've exposed the windshield washer pump to access the frame, we're going to have to wiggle this pump out of the body, and it's going to drain on the ground, so we need a bucket or a pan under here. We'll wiggle this out, unpinch the wires from all of their kind of storage points pinched into the side of the bottle. Then you have an 8mm machine screw here and another one down here. Those have to come out. And we'll see what else we got. I think up on the top we're also going to have another fitting that we have to take out up here on the frame. Yep, right up here. We'll get some light to see that in a minute. Alright, so here's the next challenge. We need to be able to wiggle out this pump. My understanding is that it's just pinched in this location here. And so we're going to start wiggle-waggling that out until it will come this direction, and it should start draining into this bucket. And I think the right idea is to wiggle this out. All right, the pump just wiggles out. And then you can see that hole, the way it comes off. You just pull the pump away. It has a snap right up at the top of the pump body. And then it's going to drain straight out of that hole. And you need to drain the entire body. And then we're going to want to unsnap the wires and disconnect that level sensor as well. So we're going to let that drain until we're at a point where it's easier to manage. Then obviously we will want to get those two 8mm machine screws out. One right up there at the top, another down here at the bottom, and then finally one up on the top of the reservoir. Alright, so your tank level sensor has to come off. We've pulled all these wires to where they're out of their pinch points so that they're free from the tank. And then right here, this red clip gets pulled backwards, right? Just slide that back. And then with your hand on the white clip, just pull out. And now your level sensor is loose. And so I've just got a 1/4 inch, one of my favorite little ratchets, 1/4 inch Craftsman ratchet with an extender on it here, and then my 8mm socket on the end there. And so we'll just bring that out. And we should be at a point where number 1 comes out pretty easy. Now we're going to move around and take care of number 2, this guy right here. Again, 8mm. And what you have up here is a push pin, so we're going to use our body panel pin remover tool. You've got a push pin there that you're going to pop out and remove, and then we see where we end up from there. But I think that's the first thing we've got to take out is that push pin right there. Let's get the body panel tool. And again, our goal is to get under the pin, raise the pin cap. This is a little hard to do with the handle on the GoPro, but let's see if we can get it out. So first we want to lift the core. Good. And the next thing we'll do is get under it. I'm going to have 2 hands to get under it, but there you can see we've got the center of the push pin lifted, and now we just have to bring the body out. Alright, here you can see I've got the push pin out, and there is the assembly. And once we have that free, then this whole nozzle, this whole assembly is ready to come out. And so we'll just have to wiggle that out of its space. It's a great big long plastic reservoir. You may have to work from the top to clear some of the hoses and steel lines, but it's just a matter of wiggling and bending and getting this guy completely out of the way. There's no additional work. You just have to be able to wiggle him out, and as you can see, he's quite a contraption. So now we have, I think, the 2 13 millimeters that have to come out, and above that, I think it's this one here. I think these 2 guys come out, and then this one up here comes out. So first I'm going to make sure he's seated so I don't end up cross-threading it. Alright, that's good. Now we just need to bump this one loose. Alright, got him out about 5 threads. And so the idea here is that as we move these around to install, right up under here is where we're going to install the pin hooks, pin mounts in. Alright, I want you to see this URL. You're looking at Blue Ox's webpage. And here, this one comes to assets.rigidhitch.com/blue_ox/bx1128.pdf. Let's take a look. Here's the passenger side base plate, and you've got spacers that need to run through these tubes. And so we'll set those spacers in. And I believe that actually the base plate sits. Oh, that looks good. Sits correct. And then you're going to have these 2 guys standing here. And then coming up through the bottom, you're going to have a setup like this, alright? So you're going to want a bolt, a lock washer, this big black spacer, and that's going to sit 1 each. These are 8 millimeter bolts. I think I've seen instructions online somewhere where they say it's an 80 millimeter bolt. It's not. Should be an 8. And there's your setup, right? You've got a bolt, you've got a spacer, and those are going to sit through the bottom of these here and here, and get installed up into the lower frame of the car. Now we'll make sure that we put in that we'll line the side of each bolt with Loctite. So here we have, I have to set this up so I don't lose it all. Loctite 272 or 271, sorry. And that's going to be run down the side of the bolt. You'll prep both of those bolts with a little bead of Loctite, and then run them through the bottom. So we'll do our best to get a look at how that works here. Just set this up over here. There you go. All right. So now what you should be seeing are the 2 bolts. These 8 millimeter bolts are the shorter, I think the shortest of all of the bolts in the kit. And so essentially you've got your lock washer, you've got a spacer plate, and then you've got this bead of, there we have it. We want a bead of Loctite down each one of those bolts. Get the next one. There we go. That's all we need. So we're going to take those two, and then we're going to go set this in, and I'm going to take you with me. To see how it's set in. Here, you should be able to see the one we've already done. So what you have right here is there's your two spacers right setting up inside there. There's holes up on top, and so we want those lined up. And then back over here under the bottom, you're going to find the bolts through the bottom. Right there, there's your bolt going through the bottom. Second one is back behind there. So we're going to go do that now on the other side. All right. This is nice. So back there and in place. Let's get a small bead. Of Loctite. Right, here's your base plate. There are the two spacers. These are the long spacers. And then underneath here, coming up from the bottom, you're going to want to have both of these bolts that are dressed with Loctite, and run them up through the bottom while you're holding the base plate over your head. There's the two, there's your two spacers, right? And they're going to line up. If you look inside here, right down inside this hole there, they're going to line up. So your base plate is going to sit right up under here, running along this channel, and then you're going to have two alignment bolts up here running through these two spacer tubes, wall tubes, and then your these two long bolts are going to come right up through these holes here, bolting it up onto the frame. Alright, so now we have the bolts in place, the bolts ready, spacers ready, and so we want to take that base plate, set it up under here, now we want to stand up those two little spacer tubes. Make sure that they're good. I've got the first bolt in. Alright, I'm going to try to put a ratchet on that and test it. Yeah, that's good. So you got your lock washer and that heavy washer or spacer plate next. We'll run that up. And I've got power tools, but little point in putting that much torque on it while we still have all this adjustment necessary for these. In fact, that's probably too much like it is. Where we need to align all these other bolt holes. All right. So the 2 bolts on the bottom, you can see them here. Here's bolt 1. Back here's bolt 2. There's your base plate. You got your walls spacers there standing up. You've got holes up on top that those spacers will go through. Right up on here, 2 of them. And that's kind of where your pin is going to sit. Here's the other hitch and pin. So we're actually beginning to make some progress now. Looks like a car that could be towed. Good. And so what we have to do now is kind of wiggle waggle that in. Make sure we got that up through there. That's pretty much how that's gonna go. Like that. So those 2 are gonna go right there, right? Right. There's your reinforcement plate. It's a pretty good heavy piece of metal there. So we're going to take that and put it on top, right up in here, in this area. You see how it sits right up on top of where those 2 long bolts are going to go through? Those bolts are going to go through the bottom, through those wall tubes, through the bumper plate, and then they're going to pass through the reinforcement plate, and then your lock nut goes on top. So let's see if we can make that happen. We'll film it from over here. There's the first long bolt. Up he goes. Now he's right up against that reinforcement plate. You should be able to see the head of the bolt protruding right up through the reinforcement plate. So we're going to put the nut over the top of that. And that should be our first one, ready to rock. All right, so I've got that rolled down to the point where it's landed on the lock washer part. Now we need to work this back up through the hole in the base plate here. Easier said than done. All right, there we go. Now I'm just gonna slip my fingers in through that hole. And with just 2 fingers through that hole, I was able to get that nut to sit on top. If you take a look now, I've got the nut in there. There are 2 nuts sitting up on top, one through that hole there, the other around this side. They run up through the bottom, and so we'll put a ratchet on that. Metric flat wrenches. There we go. Okay, I think we got a better assortment here. So what I'm going to do is set that right up here on top. That may be a 16. All right, let's bring those nuts down. Record on. Alright, so now we should have kind of what we expect. I'm going to go ahead and put that pin in there as well to get a feel for the alignment direction. Now you do have all of this adjustment. Now the pin's in. You should be able to see that. And what I want to do is use that to kind of extend the angle. I did take a large T-square and kind of line it up on the front of the car. Alright, so here's your backing plate, reinforcement. It's going to go on the back side back here. Got it. Alright, so what you should be able to see now is there's the bolt up through the top. On the bottom we've got a lock washer and a flat washer. And then up here we've got the reinforcement plate and just a lock nut. So we'll get that put together. Try to get that kind of started. There it is. Now the second bolt. I had already done this one once. Had the wrong bolt in hand. That's going to need to go through this tube and up through the top. Wiggle that around a little bit. Alright, couple of points to make. There's our assembly right now. It's fully adjustable left, right. All the bolts are loose, and I've got it right where I think is, you know, a direct 90 degrees on the toe pin. So I'm happy with where I've got it mounted now. So over here I've got a flat wrench on top of the nut, and then down here on the bolt I'm going to put an air ratchet on it, but I've got the air ratchet pressure way down. In fact, I've got the compressor turned off and I'm just going to drain it out. So this is just to get an initial set on it. Here we go again. Here you can see there's two holes down in the bottom of that plate. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to run this plate in right there on top of those two holes. Now you need those handle nuts behind them. I guess you've seen those in these kits. It's a big long nut on a stick. And you probably have to bend that around to where you can get it in there because it sticks too long to the right, so we're going to bend it back towards us. But yeah, that's going to sit right there through those two holes. You have an 1.5-inch bolt, and then up here these particular holes are going to have to be drilled out. We're going to drill them once we have that plate mounted, and the plate will make the template to drill the holes in this frame arm. The bolts that go on there, you can see there, I've got an 1.5 inch, I got a lock washer, plate washer. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have a good bead of Loctite. So that's what I did with that guy. Actually, Let's see if I can get him in there. Okay, I think that'll work. He's gonna have to go right through there. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the bolt that we prepped. Hey, by the way, remember that the angle of that frame, this is running straight across the bottom, but that frame's diagonal. And so you gotta have this running straight across the bottom and the top of the frame diagonal. And since it's trapezoid shaped, the fatter end of the trapezoid is down there on the back side of the coach or the car. So what we want to do now is we're just going to set this piece up with a 1.5 inch 3/8 bolt through it. I'm going to set that up here to where it follows the line of the frame up at the top. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that angled nut that I had in there. See if I've got it set up at a level that I can get it to catch on there. I would guess this is a little fiddly. I'm gonna have to have two hands up here. That's gonna have to do. Now what we've got up here is the plate where we need to drill the pilot holes, and then we need to drill 2 full-size holes. So let's go take care of finding the right drill and the right bit for the pilot. All right, here you can see the top bracket. Our mission is to drill a pilot hole right there in the top. So we're going to get the drill started right there. All right, now you want to drill these 2 holes out and get them the right size.
You hungry?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make them.
Thank you. All right, at this point you can see we're 3 bolts in on the side plate, or the reinforcing plate. Looks like we've got a little material extra inside the hole on the 4th hole, and so I'm going to run that big 3/8 bit through it and chew away a little bit of that extra metal on the white, and then we ought to be able to get that through. All right, now we have all the hardware in for the bracket. A couple of notes to make. When you get ready to do those top 2 bolts along the frame rail right here, these 2 top bolts here, make sure that you don't drill those holes until you have enough clearance for the nuts on the back. So that means that that plate needs to be flush or higher than the top of that frame rail, because there's a weld and a bracket, kind of a join down there. So get them high. Don't drill them low by another 1/16 of an inch, or as much as 1/8 of an inch, because that much variance going down will make it very difficult to nut those up, because the nuts on the back won't clear and they'll sit against a curved piece of frame rail back there. So when you line this all up, push that bracket up, push everything up a little bit, and make sure that the black bracket is flush or higher against the white frame rail there. So got it fixed. Now the next thing I had was I've got the safety cable around the frame rail. They say just go around the frame rail and then go through the eyelet on the bottom of the frame bracket. I went around the frame rail and the front bumper rail, the bumper extension. There seems to be some debate about how this should be done, and so we'll find out if the water jug will fit. I'm going to go ahead and get the safety cable done on the other side. One thing I will say is that I went ahead and put Loctite on the turnbuckle to kind of keep it from coming undone. So get the safety cable in after you got all your frame hardware on, and then it's time to start reassembly. All right, let's nip off that handle nut back here on the back side as best we can. So the bracket, I'm not real happy with that. Probably need to go around the edge. All right, so let's go back through reinstallation of the windshield washer is the next thing. That cable bracket that I ran through the front bumper is sitting right here. He's kind of in the way. We'll watch and see if I can get him in there. The bracket behind there maybe kind of in the way. It's pushing on the water bin. So we'll see if I kind of didn't get it in there right, but I think the answer will be it'll fit. And we'll just set, you see you got your bolt up here, you got a bolt down there. I think we'll get it to go and just kind of pull the slack of the safety bracket out of the way. Then you want to go ahead and clamp in your cables here. You've got cables that run across the back of the water. And then you've got your reservoir depth sensor here. So we'll, you can see him. So we'll get all those plugged back up shortly. But first of all, let's get those nuts in or bolts in that hold the reservoir here, and then another one up here. I believe that's a push pin here at the top. So we'll get him mounted. Then we should be good. And the push pin is here. See if we can give you enough light to get to it. There's the reservoir. So the push pin goes through this hole right here. And there's the first bolt on the windshield washer. It's probably firm enough. Alright, so now your wires go ahead and get snapped into their locations. This is your fog light setup. I'm not sure I get it. And let's think back on what we had here. We certainly had two rivets that were rubber pop rivets. Then we had a 10mm nut in front of the tire. And way down at the bottom we had another 10mm that we took out that probably attaches back to the fascia. And so my guess is what we have to do right now is reassemble the fender well with the two pop rivets and the 10mm nut at the bottom. So let's get to that. So you can see them here. Basically just two rivets, and then that trim snaps back into place to my memory. also acquired this Orx Plus Tools plastic rivet handgun. That's this device here. As you can see, it's pretty heavy duty. It's a solid, heavy piece of steel. You squeeze to compress the rivet. Here's an example of the plastic rivets that you see that come with them. So typically you are feeding that rivet into the gun and then pushing it through the holes of the material and then squeezing the handle until you get that rivet to see. And I brought it up, hung it on the front of the car, and then lying underneath, I traced where the newly mounted base plate touched the fascia. And then I measured around that and I cut with a razor knife. And that razor knife was a whole lot better than Dremel tools or saws of any sort. It's just a better material to work through with a razor knife and to cut it pretty close. So once I had trimmed that around, then I pushed the fascia back over it with it just hanging on the front, hanging over the radiator. I didn't attach anything. Hang it over the radiator and then put it on here and see if you can get those push pins on the bottom to line up. And keep trimming this around. It may take a couple of nips at it to get it right, but once you've trimmed around this, I like the job I did here better than some I've seen where they literally cut the whole piece out and left a gaping hole. I trimmed it right up against this fitting as best I could, left a little bit of a gap on the bottom, but you can actually, you know, use liquid paper or a magic marker or a wine marker pen, whatever you can, and draw on the back of the fascia, and then go lay the fascia out on some cardboard to where you won't damage anything, and cut that back right through to where you've got this. Then keep working and hang it on the nose, drape it over the front, and keep working it until you have a good fit over this hole. Razor knife's the best way to go. Continually rehanging it on the front of the car and then nipping at it until you get it properly tailored, and here's the way to go. At the point at which you've got it tailored, then those pins, the push pins on the bottom, will line up and you've got it licked. And basically, you know, we did everything you know, in a relatively tight time frame. It took most of an afternoon, morning and afternoon. So I'd say I probably spent 6-8 hours on this to get this all trimmed up and get the fascia back on. And of course, I did the wiring too. I used the socket that was available there. Normally, I would use a Hopkins. I went with a 6-pin, or at least with the plate. That's a 6-pin connector there. We tow with a 6-pin, and then I did put in a battery minder to keep the battery topped up while the coach feeds positive over one of the 6 wires there. We'll talk more in another video about the wiring plan that I use, very standard 6-pin wiring. It's the same that we're using on the other toad we have, which is the 2012 Ford Fiesta. But this was pretty easy. I ran the wiring down the right side of the driver's side of the car, tucked it up under the gunnel and the kind of right along the running board. When I got to the back wheel well and the front wheel well, I tucked inside the front wheel. On the back wheel well, I actually took out some of the push pins and ran inside the felt that covered the back wheel well. From there, probably we'll talk about in another video the package that I chose to connect on the 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee Ltd. I used a bulb package that actually has a bulb socket clip-in clean setup. So you don't have to splice into wires, you don't have to shave into anything, you don't use clip connectors. You literally plug these into the bulb plugs on the old light fixtures and then cobble that together. It's designed that way, it's plug and play, super nice, everything worked great, I don't have any problems. I've got blinkers, I've got brakes, I've got running lights. And it runs a 4-wire trailer harness from the front to the back to that bulb harness setup. This is not the configuration where you add new bulbs and jump around your whole wiring system. The old system works great. I don't have any problem with it. Incandescent bulbs in the back, etc. It was just an easy kit. So, well, hello shop fans, and it's a chilly day in Dallas, Texas. I see actually snow, who would have thought, here early mid-January. We never got around to finishing the installation of the toe plate, and here, you know, we're using up front, you can see, we're using a Blue Ox toe plate for the 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee Ltd. I've got all that installed, and so I'm backing up to go through the reinstallation of the fascia. And so as you can see here, from the Jeep logo down all the way to the bottom here, that's all one piece, and it wraps all the way around to this seam right here. So at the headlights, and it drops down, and this seam is where that fascia joins. This is a really lightweight piece, and so you can actually remove it yourself. People advise to have two people to make sure you don't break something, but I did it alone, and I actually set a box up under here under the front end, and the objective there was just to hold it up. And so I'm going to open the hood and just go through the reinstallation process real quick. But you can do this at home, and it saved us a lot of money. So I would just say, don't be intimidated by pulling the whole front end off. It took an hour probably to get the front end off. Then the work to install each of the little arms that are the particular toe plate connections, that took some time, most of a day for me, because I probably ended up poking along at it. But finally, what's really important is getting the front end back on. And so I'm going to show you some tricks. But let's get the hood up first. Okay, you're now under the front end. Again, this is a 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's the limited version. It does have the 2-speed 4-wheel drive transmission in it. And so I'm going to show you a couple of things to make sure you can tow. Don't buy a Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited without making sure you can tow it. This one does have 4-wheel drive, a 2-speed transmission, the neutral lockout, and the 4-wheel drive selector knob inside. Those are all criteria to be sure you can tow it. Now take a look at the front of the car. And right here, starting at this little piece, you can see there's a little overlap of the front fascia. What you want to do when you're ready to put the car back together, and you've got both of your toe plate connection points installed, you've got your safety chains in, now you're going to bring this front end piece, and that fascia has been lying in your shop, right? And so now you're going to bring that fascia in, and it's going to be flared open, kind of where the fender wells have popped out of the inlining of the fender well. So you're going to bring it, and then you're going to hook this front end right up here on the top of the car. And basically what you're going to see is that this will rest with the whole fascia hanging down. So you're going to be hooking this on the front of the car right here to where this black piece right here, from here to here, there's a little wing. So hook that over the front of the car, and your whole front end is going to be standing right here hooked on the front of the car. So let's get that camera aimed down just a little. All right, right here next to this square on the front of the car, this little square block, right here is your first push pin, right? These are those that you use the little pry bar tool to lift up. You slip it under the notch on the push pin, it's right there. Then you'll pop that first piece of the... Now, when you're working on the front end here, you're going to have to get all of those connectors on the bottom done, right? So we had 4 push pins, we had 3 twist tabs. Then you're going to work around to one side. As you have the front end hooked over the front of the engine, right? You're going to need to then push in this piece of the front fascia under the headlights. This snaps into place. It's one of the toughest places to work. You're going to push that in under the headlights and get it to snap into the plastic. And then you're going to need to come around to the side right here. And you see right here where this ridge is, this is where you're going to be working to get that, all of that snapped into the plastic infrastructure there. Right, that's going to bring the front end around, and then it's going to bring this in. You're going to be looking at a flared out piece here of the black plastic, right? And then you have to align those pieces here. So you're going to be aligning the the inner felt lining, the black plastic fender well lining, and the exact, the piece of the front valance that you've brought in. You align all of those, and you've got a big 10 millimeter, not big, but a 10 millimeter bolt to run through here, and then you've got those two rivets to put in. There's a twist port here. Remember, don't close this up until you've got your two sets of driving lights connected. They were disconnected to allow you to move the front fascia, so you've got to get those driving lights reconnected here. And then we're going to be riveting right here inside this wheel well. Let's go to work on that. I'll give you the picture of the riveter and how we do that. All right, shop fans, here's a great little tool, OKX Plus Tools. This is a pop riveter. These rivets are plastic rivets. This tool is a good heavy little tool, not a cheapie. It turned out to be nice, a nice tool. And so this tool here, what you're using is to be able to pop rivet these wheel wells back in. These are push pins back here, but we never took them out. We went only to these three right here. And in fact, I left that one in, so you only had the one 10 millimeter bolt that was removed here. Then we had a pop rivet here and here. Right now the wheel's a little in the way, so you would have rotated the wheel in. And then here's how you work your pop rivet. You're going to take that rivet and put it in this way, right? So the thick part of the rivet goes into the hole. And then you're going to insert that rivet just this way, right into the hole through all three layers of the material. And then you're going to start squeezing. And this is going to work that. May not get it all in one stroke. You're going to squeeze it, and if it gets all the way down and then clamps, it's going to cut that piece, the piece of the protruding rivet off that's left. If not, then you're going to pump it 2 or 3 times. So this rivet will go right through the hole that you took out the old rivet from. Right through that hole, seat it in through all 3 layers of the material. So the plastic, then the felt, then the fender well of the front fascia, right? This piece of plastic here. And then you're going to squeeze and snap that down. It's going to push that rivet through, seat it on the back side, and then it's going to cut the tip of it off. And so you'll be left with just a round black circle there, kind of, and a nib sticking out of it. Great little tool. You can pop rivet just about anything with this thing. It doesn't take any intelligence to use it. Just sink that piece right there in top of the riveting tool, push it through all 3 layers, and then work it down until you're all the way at the bottom. That's going to give you just what you need. All right, so once you finish that pop rivet inside the wheel well, 1, 2, you've got both of them to do. And then you have the one bolt that you have to put back in. You'll have across the bottom the 4 wheel well, of the 4 front valance push pins. Then there's 3 twist latches. There's a couple of big ports right here that you'll want to put back in. I use them to see what's inside there. And don't forget, whatever you do, to connect your driving lights first. Those driving lights are, it's a nice thing to have. You don't want to give them up. You could forget them if you just take the fascia and put the whole thing on, and then realize that when you disconnected the whole front end, you had to disconnect those 2 driving lights. That's the only thing that holds the front end of the car. And so if you don't put them back, you lose your driving lights. So remember that. Jump in there, get those driver's lights plugged back in there, plug fittings. And then bring in your fascia here, push into this seam along the top of the headlight. Align all 3 of these surfaces, the plastic fender well, the felt on the inside of the wheel well, and then this plastic piece here of the fascia. Pop rivet those 2 pop rivets in, and you are basically good to go. Do that on both sides, and you've knocked out this whole piece. Remember that on the wheel well, we didn't take out anything else along here, right? We left all those push pins in. We didn't pull all that felt out. We just got it open and flared it out. So when you're looking at the car with the fascia off, you've got these two pieces flared out just enough to get at it, and no more. Don't pull them out. Don't remove them. Don't remove all of this other trim. Just flare them out enough to get into this space, and you're good to go. Work the entire time that way, and then bring this back in, press it into place, and you're good to go. So, there's your 2018. I've probably gotten too much data to you already. We have towed it about between 500 and 1,000 miles. It has towed great. I've had the bump steer surface at one point, and when it surfaced, we simply slowed down. The goal was to let it recover. I was moving about 5 miles an hour. Made a right turn. There was a pothole in the road. It began to wobble. I slowed down and then sped back up. It was gone. So you're going to find out that towing this car is super easy. Once you're beyond 5 miles an hour, you'll never see the wobble. I don't have the electric steering wobble kit installed. And I know people that won't. I don't think I'll bother either. As you may